So again, happy Thanksgiving to those of you who just came through the doors in the last few minutes. How many of you had a wonderful, wonderful holiday? Yeah. And how many of you, like me, sometimes on Thanksgiving, look back on Thanksgiving's past and have some really, really good memories? And I was doing that the other day and thinking back to when I was a teenager. So we always got together with my grandparents. I still had all 4 grandparents then. Down to 1 grandmother now. But some of the best times were spent at the kid table in my paternal grandmother's house. And so I got to be at the kid table all the way to my 30s. And one year they graduated me up to the adult table, but then I was demoted again to the kid table. But I remember one particular Thanksgiving, I had to be 16 or 17, and my cousin Brian said, "I'll be so glad when Thanksgiving is over." I said, "Well, why, sweetie? Aren't we having fun?" He said, "Yeah, but I'm really getting tired of saying thank you to everything." Now, he was 4 or 5 years old, you got to understand, but how many of us do some version of that even now? Oh, okay, it's over now. It's not that we consciously think I don't have to be grateful anymore, but we do kind of step out of the being deliberately and consciously and mindfully grateful, perhaps, and life goes on. So not that many of us actually remain in a consciousness of gratitude. I'm not pointing any fingers. It certainly happens to me too, and then it's like, oh, of course, I haven't done my gratitude practice in 13 days. No wonder, no wonder. So I had a revelation lately, and when I say the words to you, it's not going to be earth-shaking or anything like that. It's very simple. In fact, it's almost overstating the obvious. But it just came to me in one of those flashes you get sometimes. There is no abundance without gratitude. There is no abundance without gratitude. Now, we are taught, of course, that we come into this world and we are heirs to the kingdom, that everything is ours for not even the asking, but just the affirming and the taking and the using and the sharing. It's already there, and we don't always partake. But I repeat one more time, there is no abundance without gratitude. Gratitude has to happen first. We have to be grateful for those blessings before we can actually apprehend them with our senses and enjoy them in our experience. So let's begin this morning. Our title is The Great Multiplier. But I want to start with a question, and that is, would it be okay with you? Would it be okay with you to start experiencing a greater level of abundance? Raise your hand if it's a yes. Okay, even if life is already very, very abundant, and I know for most of you it is. There's always more, isn't there? And it's our divine nature always to gravitate to the more. So it would be okay with you to experience a greater level of abundance, yes? Okay, very good. Now, the only way to do that is for us to increase our gratitude, because gratitude is, in fact, the great multiplier. I don't remember who said that originally, and it's been thrown around for decades and decades. It might be biblical, I honestly don't know. Some of you may know. But gratitude is the great multiplier. So we're going to look at gratitude in 3 different ways today. The first is gratitude as a frequency. The second is gratitude as a context. And the third is gratitude as a practice. So frequency, context, and practice. And this will give you sort of a structure to put around how you approach your gratitude, hopefully from now going forward. And not that you're not doing it already, but we can always benefit from bringing more awareness, can't we, to what we're already doing and doing well. In The Science of Mind textbook, our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, writes, "A thankful heart is in harmony with life." That's a beautiful quote, and it's a beautiful statement. But I can tell you right now, Dr. Holmes didn't write that just to make us feel good and go, "Aw, isn't that nice?" He's making a scientific claim, my friends. He is making a scientific claim right there on the page. Because he's not talking about being in harmony with the conditions and circumstances of our lives. He's not saying, look at the stuff in your world, and even if it's terrible, say, thank you, God. He doesn't mean that at all. What he means is that gratitude, thankfulness, is a technology, and when we get on its wavelength, we are able to see and experience the abundance that is ours by divine birthright. So let me tell you the quote again, and I want you to think about it in this new scientific way, straight out of physics. A thankful heart is in harmony with life. A heart that is filled with gratitude is vibrating on the same energy frequency as abundance. Gratitude is the feeling tone that is associated with abundance. The two are inseparable. You can't have one without the other, because when you have abundance, you're grateful for it. But you must be grateful first in order to have the abundance. So they're two sides of a divine coin. We have to have both. Now, we already know that our conditions and circumstances, the effects of our lives, the forms, if you will, are always subject to change. Those are not the truth. They live at the level of fact, and they're always subject to change. And we can change them anytime we choose. But our essence, the core of us, the spirit of us, the invisible side of us cannot change. We came into this life, and not necessarily even this body, but into our soul existence, perfect, whole, and complete. Our essence cannot change. It is infinite and eternal, and it is changeless. So what can we extrapolate from this? Form changes, our essence does not. So regardless of what we see in our lives, in our checking account, in our family, in our physical health, whatever it is, we will never be more or less abundant than we are right now. We will never be more or less abundant than we are right now, because in this moment and in every moment, we are all abundant. Not all of us are abundant. We are completely, totally, all abundant. So we can never become less abundant, and we can never become more abundant. We are just the all abundance of the universe right where we are, right where we stand. Now, if we wrap our heads around this, what logically follows sometimes is the question, which is like the yeah, but. Yeah, but then why do I see this in my world, this apparent lack? Not just in money necessarily. It could be in relationships or creative expression. It could be in our health. It could be anywhere in the effects of our lives. So we might rightfully, as intelligent students of mental science, ask, wow, I understand that I am changeless. I am the all abundance of spirit expressing in this moment, but look at my world. These things don't balance. There's a disconnect. And we call that disconnect the gap. The gap. What is the gap? Well, the gap doesn't really exist at the level of reality with a capital R, but it appears to have existence at the level of our human life. It's the separation between what we know and what we experience, between the truth and the effect often. How do we bridge that? Well, like everything else, that apparent gap only exists in our mind, so the place we must go to bridge that gap is where? In our mind. Okay, in our mind. And the way we do that, how do we use our mind? We want to bring the frequency of our thought to a higher level. No one thinks our thoughts but us. What kinds of thoughts are we thinking? We have control of that in every moment. And the moment we choose a higher thought, it displaces the lower thought, and the lower thought is gone forever. We don't have to get rid of the low thought before we take on the high thought. So we want to get on the same frequency as the abundance we desire. What is that? When you close your eyes and you look into your imagination, do you see a picture associated with what abundance looks like to you? I see a lot of food and a lot of shoes and a lot of friends, and it's just fun, it's energetic, and I can tap into that feeling. Yeah, and it feels really good, doesn't it? Now, if I look at my world and I don't like what I see, I can change that by going into my theater of the mind, as Maxwell Maltz calls it, and play that. So, like when you're watching television, if something comes on and you don't like it, what do? Change the channel. Yeah, what do you call that when somebody's got a remote and they're just changing the channel? Surfing, channel surfing. Now, I'm not suggesting we channel surf through life and start clicking to something else every moment. The point is, if we don't like what we see, we can create a new image for that. Same thing with a radio frequency, right? If some news comes on my jazz station, I don't think there's really news. It's member supported, but sometimes there's a lot of talking. I switch over to my classical station. And when they start talking, I switch back to the jazz station. I can do that. I can go to whatever frequency I want. Or if you're on a road trip and you love your radio station, at some point you get all this static on the grapevine, maybe if you're headed south. You change to a different frequency. We can do that with our thought. We change it from a lower frequency, which creates apparent lack in any area of our lives, and we bring it to a higher frequency that is consistent with the abundance we know is ours. We came into this world to have life and have it abundantly. So what are we waiting for? We want to become a magnet to the good that is ours. The only way to be that magnet, to be that attractive force, is to calibrate our thought at this higher frequency. This is physics. I mean, you know, right, that science of mind is physics. It feels good and there's a lot of heart in it. But at the end of the day, we can distill it down to pure science, hard science. That's what it is. That's why we love Einstein so much. Everything he says sounds like Ernest Holmes could have said it. So Einstein says, once you create the harmonic frequency of something, it cannot help but manifest. It has to. It doesn't have a choice because we create that prototype in thought. And the universe, law, has to bring that forth for us. Of course, we know it was already there. So it's just becoming visible to us. But these are the rules of quantum science. If we match the frequency of our thought with the good we desire, that good must come forth. It must. Not maybe, not sometimes, but it must, always, in every single case. So it's good if we can get a feeling of what that's like. How many of you are practitioners? Raise your hand. Yeah. And how many of you have ever worked with a practitioner? Right? And how many of you do both? Now, I know in this center, our practitioners, well, first of all, they're the most amazing practitioners in the universe, but they're trained to say to the client, and as a client and a practitioner, I've been the recipient of this wisdom. Okay, imagine for a moment that you already have your demonstration. What does that feel like? That changes everything, doesn't it? It changes the entire session. Those of you who are practitioners, you see this in the face of the person sitting next to you or across from you. Those of you who have been in the client role, you know that your body just, it relaxes. What does that feel like? You can immediately go there. That's what we want to do. And sometimes we forget how wonderful it is just to tap into feeling and experience the good around us. You know, there's so much of it, really. Most of you are familiar with the story of the boy in the bubble, David. He was a baby boy born without an immune system. So he was raised inside a protective bubble, a sterile environment, and he never had any human contact. Now, at some point in his life, it was suggested that he undergo a bone marrow transplant, that perhaps that would cure his condition. And they found a donor. I don't know that they ever found a match, but they found a donor. So in the time leading up to the procedure, David was asked, if someday you're able to live outside the bubble, what would you like to do? And he said two things. He said, I would like to feel what it's like to walk barefoot on the grass. And I would like to feel what it's like to hold my mother's hand. My mother's right there. I can hold her hand anytime I want to. Do I think about that and rejoice about it all day, every day? No, but you know what? I'm reminded of it now, and so I'm going to start. So he had that vision, didn't he? He could, this boy who had never experienced the outside world or human contact, could imaginally go to a place where his little feet were touching the grass and he was holding his mother's hand. We can do that because when we do, the universe has to respond. It has to respond. We're creating like this all the time. We are creating a life every single day. Today we're creating a life. We started it in this sanctuary. That is a good place to start. and that life has content, and that life has substance. And some of that content and substance is tangible, and some of it is intangible. But it's all good, and we want to increase both the tangible and the intangible. We want to increase it. We want to use gratitude as a technology, as the great multiplier, to increase our good. How do we do that? This brings us to part 2, which is gratitude as a context. A context. Some of you have heard me share some of the stories from my trip to the Okefenokee Swamp. It was maybe 10, 12 years ago. A lot happened that day. Lots of great stories that illustrate life lessons. But this one I haven't told before, but it came to be when the idea of we're already standing in our abundance. So it was very cold, and it was around Thanksgiving, actually. I went to Florida to spend time with some friends for Thanksgiving, and they took me to Okefenokee Swamp. And it's just beautiful. I mean, the vegetation there is amazing at any time of year. But in the fall, bordering on winter, the trees are bare, but there are these floating islands in the swamp. They're floating islands of plant matter, of vegetation. And you can actually stand on them, and they wobble. You don't sink to the ground. And this is where the swamp gets its name. Okefenokee apparently means land of the trembling earth.